Hey, what's up you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So first of all, I am so sorry about the incredibly super long unannounced hiatus. It has been like a whole month, if not more, which is insane. To tell you guys the truth, I wasn't planning on taking such a long hiatus, which is why I never announced that I would be taking one to begin with. But I did. I don't know if I've mentioned it before on this channel, but I'm trying to move by the end of this year, so I've been taking on a ton of commissions at once so that I can keep my income consistent. The problem was I was taking on way more commissions than I have ever been used to, so I had virtually no sense of time management for this new workflow that I've been in, which is why since January my uploads have been kind of inconsistent, and while I can't promise that it will be consistent again and that I'll be posting every Saturday like I used to, I'm hoping that that will be the case since I think I kind of have my workflow down a bit better. I mean, hey, I'm sitting down to type out this script, right? So, before we get into the video though, I do want to touch on two things. One is that everything from 2021, including some new prints that I put up this year that were based on some Housekeeping illustrations that I did last year, are currently 70% off on my Etsy shop, which means you're getting sticker bundles for less than $3, which are usually $9, full set bundles for $6, which are usually $20, individual stickers for like $1, which are usually like $3 to $5, and on top of that, the new Housekeeping prints, which I'll pop up on screen here, are currently only $3 each, or $18 for all 8. It's normally $10 for each print and $60 for all 8 of them. So this sale is only going to last until May 22nd. If any of those sale prices sound good for you and you want that, now is the time to get them. There will of course be a link on screen here, and as always one in the description. Last thing I want to mention is my Patreon. I recently raised my commission prices so that I can take on less work to be able to do other things like this channel, of course, and the shop and regular Patreon uploads. But the reason that I am mentioning it is because, like I said in my last video, I just added a bunch of new stuff to it that I'm really excited about. So something I've been posting recently, not too recently, but you know, I've been posting them as often as I have time to do them, are warm-up sketches, some little extra doodles when I'm planning things out. Most excitingly though, I added monthly commissions to the Matcha Mail tier, which I know sounds a little counterproductive, but I only accept headshot commissions for the monthly option. That'll look something like this. So they're kind of just cutesy little floaty heads that don't take me very long to do, and I'm hoping that doing them this way will give me a little bit more passive income. I'll be able to get these done quickly, and it'll be a lot easier than cranking out some of the more detailed ones. These commissions are currently worth $40 unless you're in the Matcha Mail tier, in which case they'll only be $25. And on top of that, you get stickers, prints, and PSD files of all the physical rewards and all of the other rewards in other tiers on top of that. Also, the physical rewards are currently only available for US patrons due to the crazy international shipping prices right now. If I see any changes to that on my end, I will certainly open it up in the future. That being said, international patrons are still welcome to join the Matcha Mail tier for the monthly commission, and they'll still receive access to all the PSD files of the rewards. And on top of that, they still receive an Etsy shop discount, so if you really like the rewards for the month but unfortunately can't get the physical rewards, you can get a discount on them when they go up in the Etsy shop the next month, and you also get a commission discount on top of that. So that being said, last thing before we move into the actual video. I know I always do this, but of course there is no pressure to actually join the Patreon. I know times are tough right now in between an ongoing and post-panorama world. It's really hard to know where we stand and everything right now, so if you can't support the Patreon, I still appreciate you guys just sitting here and watching my videos. Just liking, commenting, sharing, or straight up just sitting and watching is enough to support this channel, and I really appreciate every little thing that you guys do for me. So again, no pressure to join the Patreon. I just keep mentioning them because there's a lot of cool stuff on there that I am really proud of, but I'm also really proud of my videos, so if you can only sit and watch them, I appreciate that too. So now let's finally get into, mega peaked my mic, finally get into the video. So I wanted to make the transitioning to filming again easier on me, so instead of starting out with a whole new piece from scratch, I decided I would do a paint over of an older drawing. I have done plenty of redraws, but I've never tried to paint directly on top of one of my older pieces, so I thought that that might be fun to try. And initially, I thought this was going to be super easy, but I struggled before we even started to get this challenge going. I took a scroll through my Instagram, and when I tell you I was pre-Panini deep, like full on back when I started my channel, didn't even have 200 followers on Instagram deep, and I was struggling to find an illustration I could use for this challenge. A lot of my digital pieces on Instagram were either unfinished sketches, half-rendered paintings, or things that were so simple a paint over wouldn't even necessarily gauge my progress that well, considering that the new piece would be rendered and the old one would essentially be flat color with some cell shading. Wow, tongue twister. But I finally managed to find this piece, and ironically this piece was supposed to be for a Huevember all the way back in 2018, which does not feel right to me. It feels like this piece was made at least 100 years ago, but I guess it's been 4. When I first made this illustration, it was literally one of my favorite pieces ever. When I tell you, I used to use this piece for everything. Any chance I got to show my art, I was using it for my commission sheet. I was using it to promote my work. I just loved it so much, and honestly a part of me still does. I like the colors, I like her outfit and her hairstyle, like just her style in general. I do think she is really cute. Honestly, I love everything about this illustration that isn't the anatomy. Like Miss Girl's eyebrow bones are almost one solid bone, like clearly they're almost touching. Her mouth is at a 3/4 angle while the rest of her face is facing forward. I think her body is slightly turned to the side, which is a classic thing that I still currently do, but her shoulders are she's got some interesting bone structure. The last thing that does bother me about this is just the whole arm where her hand is up. Her shoulder I think is fine, other than the fact that it's slumped way down and she has no shoulder bones. But what really bothers me is her elbow where she's like holding her hand. It's like she's got to be double jointed or something, because that's just, it's wrong. But aside from that, and moving into the actual paint over, so the first thing that I tried to do was I messed with the liquefy tool because I wanted to adjust the anatomy as best as I could before moving into the actual paint over. I didn't want to do a sketch over top to create a new bone structure because I felt like that would defeat the initial purpose of the paint over. I wasn't going for a redraw like I mentioned previously. Obviously, I am going to be morphing this character into my current style, so things are definitely going to be rendered differently, but I'm still going to be picking from the initial piece to create the new one, if that makes sense, rather than just using it as a reference and recreating it how I would now, like you do obviously with a normal redraw. So definitely the anatomy adjustment was sort of difficult when it came to things like her shoulders, which I absolutely anticipated. They were definitely very sloped and round, and just she had no collarbone whatsoever. So I liquefied it as much as I could before I finally just went over top and started adding some flats in with my thick pencil brush that I'm obsessed with. It's linked somewhere deep in my community tab, or it's by Fossil Forager on Twitter if you want to find that brush somewhere. I'm obsessed with it. But yeah, I just put some flats down to kind of recreate a new bone structure because I was really struggling just trying to liquefy it. I'm also pretty sure that I chopped her hand off for an extended period of time because her hand was just like, it's not the worst hand ever, especially for a piece that's 4 years old, but it's definitely not good, and looking at it was just stressing me out. Every artist struggles with hands, and if you say you don't, yes you do, and you're a liar. So yeah, I didn't want to unpack all of that, so I just chopped the hand off for now, and I went back into it later. But before that, obviously, I went back to my comfort zone, which is the face, the portrait area of the illustration. So, I actually ended up having a bit of trouble here as well, and that is because this is in my old painting style. So if you are a new member of the channel, or not member, I don't have channel memberships turned on. If you're a new subscriber or viewer in general, a lot of the illustrations you'll see me doing are like an initial sketch that you guys see going on in the corner with some line art, and then I will go in and I'll do my flats, and then I'll kind of render, but I still, I still use line art. Which is definitely different than what I used to do. Line art used to be the bane of my existence from pretty much the beginning of my digital illustration career, if you can call it that. But yeah, my beginning stages of my digital art were basically I would sketch and then I would paint right on top of that sketch, because there was no way you were gonna get me to do line art. No, absolutely not. So a lot of my illustrations prior to that, or prior to now, were painted, if that makes sense, like super rendered. No line art, very blendy. The original piece that you guys see here was done in Paint Tool Sci, and I'm sure this is obvious for you guys right now, but I am using Procreate, so the brush styles are vastly different between the two programs, and I'm also a little out of practice with doing these full renders as opposed to having line art like I mentioned before, so it was nice to kind of work in this style again, although like I mentioned, it was kind of a struggle, especially because I had to do this all on one layer. Like, I do add a few layers when I worry about like missing like a certain portion of the illustration. For example, her lashes, I did those on a separate layer, and those pretty much stayed on their own layer until the end of the illustration because I did not want to lose them. And when you do things on one layer, it gets really complicated because things start to disappear when you start to do things like blending. I remember I was particularly worried about losing her nose because when I did go in and I liquefied that area, I kind of pushed it to like almost the exact way that I would currently illustrate it, so I didn't really have to do much to her nose other than I slightly changed how I rendered it. But while I was doing that, it really scared me because I was freaked that I was going to lose like all of the line art that I had on the original illustration. This also took me vastly longer than any of my illustrations have recently. So a fully rendered illustration like this can take anywhere from up to maybe 40 minutes to an hour if I'm doing something that's super detailed. However, this piece, I'm pretty sure, took me at least 3, possibly 4 hours to do. And that is purely because of rendering takes so long when you do it on one layer, especially because I also was having to paint on top of the background layer, obviously because I was starting over with a piece that I had already rendered. There's no transparent background layer, so I'm constantly having to like keep track of where the background is, and I'm erasing things, and that means I'm erasing the background, and that was just a whole struggle that I had to try to figure out, especially towards the end of the illustration when I was trying to add a background back in. But we will get to that. Anyways, so yeah, there was just a lot of backtracking when it came to the rendering process. A lot of me putting things down and then accidentally painting over things and having to repaint over them, or wanting to erase this tiny little thing, but then it erases a bunch of other things, and it's just, it was something. But at the end of the day, I do really like how it turned out. I think it was really cute. It was a lot of fun for me to do. If you want to see what kind of brushes I use for painting and rendering, I do have a video up on the channel already where I talk about all of the brushes I used, and they were still the brushes I used for this piece, even though it's a little bit of a different style, obviously, than I normally do, but if you want to see that, hopefully I'll remember to add an iCard somewhere at this point. I probably won't, because I usually add them at the beginning of the video, and we're nearing the end here. But yeah, I really liked the painting process, even though it took me a very long time. Something else that I also really struggled with throughout this piece was just anatomy, because the original piece was definitely something to work with. It is by no means the worst anatomy that I've ever done, but trying to fix anatomy, paint over anatomy, and create a new piece that has correct anatomy. How many times am I going to say anatomy in this video? It's kind of complicated for me. I think for normal people it would be fine, but I overthought everything while I was creating this. Every little detail I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. So yeah, that was definitely interesting. Overall, I think my most favorite part to do was her hair, because that was also one of my favorite things to render back when I painted like this. As you can tell, hopefully, in the original piece, there's a lot of lines in her hair, which I would not recommend doing, especially if you're going for like a semi-realism type style. You don't have to illustrate every single strand of hair, but for some reason, how old was I in 2018? Was this in 2018? 19-year-old Simon did that all the time, and it wasn't just 19-year-old Simon. I've been doing this for years. I was doing it like that. Do not torture yourself. Do what I did in this piece. So I painted over the entirety of the hair. I just color blocked the whole thing, and then I started breaking it into chunks, this isn't just how I do it in my painterly style. This is also how I do it just for my regular how I do hair normally with line art. Is I don't color block it, but what I essentially do is I get the basic shape for how I want the hair to be, the silhouette of the hair, and then I'll start chunking it, and I will render those chunks, and then I'll put like some what's the word, where it's like the idea of multiple strands without necessarily drawing every single little freaking strand, because it takes a long time and it's really, really difficult. But yeah, I really love her hair. The only thing that I wish was easier was because I did do a little gradient for her hair. Obviously the gradient is really cute. I think I merged a couple of different days of Huevember into this piece, which is why there's like the orange and then the pink and then the red. So yeah, I wanted to, and not only that, obviously cherries. If you see cherries that are unripe, sometimes they're a little yellow at the bottom, and I think that's adorable. So I wanted to bring some of that in as well. I'm not sure if that was the exact intention or if I thought of that because that was the color. I'm pretty sure it was some combination of both. It's been 4 years. Anyway, I like the gradient on her hair, but recreating it was super annoying, especially with it being on one layer. And I did color pick for her hair as well, but for some reason, after I had finished painting, it just looked so much darker and deeper than her actual hair was in the original piece. Not even before I added the yellow in, just the red part itself was super, super dark and kind of desaturated. So, that might have been because I tried to add a lot of darker, deeper shades in to add more contrast, but whatever the reason being, it was super dark. So when I went in to do the gradient layer, I wanted to brighten it up a bit, but it was so hard for me to find like an actual like layer mode that would not only, put that yellow on there and make it pretty, but also lighten up that red. For some reason, it was super overexposed, and it took me a while before I was able to find both the right level of saturation and brightness, as well as a layer mode that would let me put it over top. But then after I put it over top, it was super annoying because going back to backtracking, or I guess you could say backtracking to backtracking, I would have to take that, I had to blend out the edges, and then I had to repaint over all of the areas where the layer mode had either not adjusted or adjusted the painting beneath it. So that was really frustrating to have to constantly redo. But it ended up looking pretty okay, and I really like it a lot. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was the background, and the background was frustrating because, as I mentioned before, I had to totally repaint on top of the background, which meant that at the end I would have to use my selection tool. So what I do to get rid of all the white in the background is there's the automatic selection tool, which is my best friend for so many different reasons. You'll see me use it for pretty much all of the things that what I use it for in this video, but the first thing that I used it for was to get rid of the white. So what you do is you take the selection tool, and then you can drag your Apple Pencil across the screen to either you know, select more or less of the area that you're selecting, if that makes sense. So for me, I was trying to delete all the white, but I also didn't want to delete the white that was inside her shirt, so I kind of adjusted it as best as I could. However, it's not perfect, so there's areas around her hair and just the edges of the illustration in general that are still white, and then there was also just like this random area around her hand that was like white, little tiny things that almost like followed the lines of her fingers, which was strange. I don't know why that was there, but I ended up just erasing it. It wasn't too difficult. The only thing that bothers me is that there is just a slight white cast around certain parts of the illustration, but I tried to make it work with this little white outline. So the white outline is the other thing that I use the automatic selection tool. I wish it was a little bit easier. In Paint Tool Sci, all you had to do was select your illustration, and then like there was something that like you could do it by like 1 pixel increments, and you just kind of adjusted it and then filled the area. However, in Procreate, what you have to do is you have to select whatever it is that you're trying to outline, and then you have to duplicate that so you don't lose the original, obviously. And then you might be able to do this in other colors. I just do white because when I initially found the tutorial for this, that's what the person did. I fill the layer white, and then I duplicate the white layer, and then if you alpha lock the layer, unselect alpha lock, and then go to your Gaussian blur and blur it however big you want your outline to be. When I initially did it, I made the outline a little bit too big, so I went back and I made it a little smaller, and then you merge the original white layer with the layer that you blurred, so you have like white with kind of a blur, obviously, surrounding the white. And then you go back with your automatic selection tool and you select you know, the white part but also the area around it that's blurred, and then you fill all of that in, and you'll have an outline of your original piece. Obviously you have to move that layer underneath the initial illustration to see that it's an outline, but that it works. I like it. I definitely think it helped the illustration pop out against the background. That's my #1 thing that I do if I feel like I've created a piece and then made a background that just, it blended in a little bit too much. I didn't want to make the background not pink because she just looks like a pink girl. So yeah, but because there's so much, you know, like reds and, you know, pinks and peaches and oranges and stuff in this illustration, I just wanted to tone it down, or not tone it down, but I wanted to have it pop against the background a little bit. So I did add that white outline, and I think that helped get rid of some of the white cast, but you could see it peeking around the edges somewhere if you look really, really close, but don't, because just don't. Anyways, so yeah, that is this piece. I am super happy with it. Oh, also, I don't know if I mentioned, I am going to be uploading the super long version of this illustration. It's not going to have commentary or anything on it. It's just going to be a nice voiceover of this video up on my Patreon for patrons. So it doesn't matter what tier you're on, if you're on the, you know, little chai tier, or if you're on the matcha tier, that's gonna be on there with some music so you guys can chill and draw along with me if that's something you're interested in. I also, of course, because of that, want to give a huge shout out to my patrons: Elise Thompson, Duran, Mandy, Sleeps, Kruki, Created by Twins, and Kaya. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support me every single month. Like I said at the beginning of this video, no pressure to join the Patreon, but there's a ton of cool stuff that I've been adding on there, like behind the scenes sketches for stuff that's not going to be going up on Instagram or anything like that. Literally just like, you are only going to see that on Patreon. Stuff like the longer form video where it's just music and a big long speed paint for y'all. That's not gonna go up anywhere else. That's only gonna be on Patreon. Obviously the monthly commissions, which I'm super excited about. You literally jump on that because the headshots are 40 now, but they're only 25, and you get physical rewards if you're on my matcha tier. Also, did I mention this in a video at all? I have a Discord server. that I really need to link in the description of this video. I have a Discord server now. There's an exclusive channel for patrons only to chat with me. There's also Patreon roles on Discord, but also anybody can join the Discord. It's not just Patreon exclusive, so if you want to come in there and see me ramble every 4 days when I remember that Discord is a thing and I like take a picture of some random cat I saw at Starbucks, there's my Discord server. It's fun on there. There's a couple of you guys that are already on there, so thank you guys for joining. I love you guys so much. I hope I can get back into a more regular upload schedule, but until then, I will see y'all next time. Bye.